What if the biggest sign she's thinking about you is the one most men completely miss? Sometimes attraction does not appear the way movies or social media portray it. It isn't always loud, obvious, or dramatic. In many real-life situations, attraction is quiet. It hides in small behaviors, subtle reactions, and moments most people overlook. Many men walk away convinced a woman is not interested, when in reality she may be thinking about them far more than they realize. Human emotions are rarely straightforward. People protect their feelings. They hesitate. They analyze. And sometimes they create distance, even when curiosity and attraction are present. The key is not to chase signals that are obvious to everyone, but to learn how to notice the quiet patterns that reveal what someone truly feels beneath the surface. You think she doesn't like you. Maybe she doesn't text first very often. Maybe she seems calm, composed, almost indifferent when you are around. Maybe she keeps conversations short, and in your mind, that means the answer is clear. But attraction, especially thoughtful attraction, often hides behind restraint. There is one pattern that many people overlook. It is not loud, not dramatic, and not something she will openly admit. It is the pattern of reappearing attention. Think about the moments when she finds subtle reasons to come back into your space. Maybe she responds to a story you posted hours later with a simple reaction. Maybe she asks a random question that could have easily been ignored. Maybe she remembers something small you mentioned weeks ago and casually brings it up again. These moments seem small, almost meaningless if you look at them individually. But when you step back, you notice a quiet rhythm. Her attention keeps circling back to you. When someone truly has no interest, their attention moves forward. People naturally invest their thoughts where their curiosity lives. If she repeatedly returns to you in small ways, it reveals something deeper than surface-level politeness. It shows that somewhere in her mind, you occupy space. Psychology tells us that the human brain revisits what emotionally stimulates it. Curiosity, mystery, and unresolved feelings create mental loops. When someone triggers those loops, the mind keeps returning to them even when there is no immediate reason. This is why sometimes the woman who seems the least obvious about her interest is actually the one thinking the most. She is observing. She is processing. She is deciding how she feels without rushing the process. Watch how she reacts when you appear unexpectedly. Does her energy subtly shift? Maybe her tone softens slightly, or she becomes a little more attentive. Sometimes it is not excitement that reveals interest, but awareness. When someone is emotionally indifferent, your presence barely registers. But when someone has been thinking about you, even if they hide it well, there is a moment of recognition that appears in their behavior. Another sign is when conversations with her never truly end. They pause, they fade, but somehow they restart again later. A random message, a comment about something you discussed before, a shared joke that suddenly reappears days later. These small reopenings are rarely accidental. They are often the mind searching for another opportunity to reconnect without appearing too eager. Many people assume attraction must be obvious to be real, but often the opposite is true. The most thoughtful forms of attraction develop quietly because the person experiencing them is careful. They observe before they reveal. Sometimes she might even appear distant at moments when you expect enthusiasm. This confuses many men. But distance can sometimes be a form of emotional caution. When someone feels curious about you, but is unsure where things will go, they may create small amounts of space to protect themselves. What matters is not a single moment, but the pattern of attention. Does she keep finding ways to re-enter your world? Does she subtly track your life, your ideas, your updates? Does she show awareness of things you never directly told her again? People rarely invest that kind of mental energy into someone they truly do not care about. Another overlooked detail is memory. When someone is thinking about you often, they remember things that others forget. A small preference you mentioned, a random opinion you shared, a story from your past. When these details resurface later in conversation, it reveals something powerful. She has been replaying those moments in her mind. Memory is one of the clearest indicators of attention. We remember what our mind revisits. This does not mean every quiet gesture equals deep attraction. But when you combine repeated attention, subtle curiosity, remember details, and the rhythm of conversations that keep restarting, a picture begins to form. You start to realize that what looked like indifference may actually be something much more thoughtful. The mistake many people make is expecting attraction to look dramatic. They wait for obvious compliments, constant texting, or direct confessions. But real human connection often grows beneath the surface long before it becomes visible. The person who is thinking about you the most is not always the one making the loudest move. Sometimes it is the one quietly observing, quietly returning, quietly keeping you somewhere in their thoughts without announcing it to the world. And once you begin noticing these subtle patterns, your entire understanding of attraction starts to change. Many people misunderstand quiet attraction because they expect interest to appear in obvious ways. They believe that if someone truly likes them, the signs will be loud, direct, and impossible to miss. But human emotions rarely work that way. Attraction often moves quietly, especially when someone is thoughtful, cautious, or naturally reserved. Because of this, many men assume a woman is not interested, when in reality she is simply expressing her curiosity in a more subtle way. Quiet attraction usually hides in behaviors that seem ordinary on the surface. A woman might not constantly message you, openly flirt, or try to dominate your attention. Instead, her interest shows in smaller patterns. She may listen carefully when you speak, remember things you mentioned long ago, or appear around you more often than coincidence would suggest. These behaviors don't scream attraction, but they quietly reveal attention. The problem is that many people interpret calmness as indifference. If she isn't overly expressive, they assume she feels nothing. But for many individuals, attraction actually makes them more controlled rather than more obvious. They become aware of their actions and try not to reveal too much too quickly. This restraint can easily be mistaken for disinterest. Another reason quiet attraction is misread is because people compare real life to exaggerated portrayals of romance. Movies and social media often show affection as dramatic and constant. In reality, many people process their feelings internally. They observe, analyze, and slowly decide how much of their emotions they want to reveal. When someone feels intrigued by you, but isn't sure where things might lead, they often move carefully. They may engage with you in thoughtful ways while still maintaining a sense of emotional balance. To someone expecting bold signals, this careful behavior can look like a lack of interest. But when you start paying attention to patterns rather than isolated moments, quiet attraction becomes much clearer. It reveals itself through consistent awareness, subtle curiosity, and the small ways someone keeps returning to your presence without making a scene about it. Emotional curiosity is one of the earliest and most overlooked signs of attraction. It does not appear as intense flirting or dramatic attention. Instead, it shows itself through a quiet desire to understand you. When someone feels emotionally curious about you, they begin paying attention to the small details of who you are, how you think, and what shapes your perspective. This kind of curiosity often appears through questions that go slightly deeper than casual conversation. She might ask about your opinions, your experiences, or the reasons behind certain choices you have made in life. The questions may seem simple on the surface, but the intention behind them is meaningful. She is not just filling silence. She is trying to explore who you are beyond the obvious. Another subtle signal is how carefully she listens. Many conversations in daily life are surface level, where people wait for their turn to speak rather than truly paying attention. But emotional curiosity creates a different dynamic. When she is genuinely curious about you, she absorbs what you say. She remembers pieces of your stories, your interests, and even small details that others might ignore. You might also notice that she reacts thoughtfully to things you share. Instead of giving quick or distracted responses, she reflects on what you said. She might bring it up again later or connect it to another topic during a future conversation. These moments show that your words stayed in her mind long after the conversation ended. Emotional curiosity can also appear through observation. Sometimes she may not ask direct questions, but instead watch how you interact with others, how you handle situations, or how you express your ideas. This quiet observation is often a way for someone to understand your character before revealing too much of their own feelings. When someone shows this kind of curiosity, it means your presence has moved beyond casual interest. You have captured their attention in a deeper way, and their mind has started exploring the layers of who you are. Distance is often misunderstood in relationships and attraction. Many people assume that when someone creates space, it means they are not interested. But in many situations, distance can actually hide deeper curiosity and stronger emotional awareness. When feelings begin to develop, some people instinctively step back, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel more than they expected. Human emotions can be complex, and attraction often brings a mix of excitement and uncertainty. When someone begins to notice that a person affects them in a meaningful way, they may pause and create a little distance to understand those feelings. This space allows them to think clearly without acting too quickly. Instead of rushing forward, they observe from a distance and evaluate what the connection truly means to them. Distance can also appear when someone wants to protect their emotional balance. Attraction makes people vulnerable, and not everyone is comfortable revealing that vulnerability immediately. By stepping back slightly, they maintain control over their emotions while still paying attention to the person who caught their interest. From the outside, it may look like indifference, but internally, there may be a quiet awareness that keeps bringing their thoughts back to that person. Another reason distance can signal deeper interest is that it often increases attention. When someone creates space, they may actually become more observant. They watch how you behave, how you treat others, and how consistent your actions are. This quiet observation allows them to understand your character before becoming more emotionally open. In many cases, people who feel nothing simply move on. Their attention shifts elsewhere without hesitation. But when someone creates thoughtful distance, it often means your presence still occupies space in their mind. They may not always show it through constant interaction, but their awareness remains quietly focused on you, even from afar. Attention is one of the clearest indicators of what the human mind values. People naturally focus their thoughts on what captures their curiosity, emotions, or imagination. When someone repeatedly appears in another person's thoughts, it is rarely random. The mind tends to return to people who create a sense of intrigue, emotional stimulation, or unresolved curiosity. Psychology shows that the brain is drawn to patterns that feel incomplete. When an interaction leaves a sense of mystery or emotional interest, the mind often continues thinking about it long after the moment has passed. This is why certain conversations, brief encounters, or meaningful exchanges stay in someone's thoughts throughout the day. The brain revisits them, replaying details and searching for deeper understanding. Lingering thoughts are also connected to emotional impact. When someone affects how a person feels, whether through calm confidence, thoughtful conversation, or a unique presence, the mind begins to associate that person with a certain emotional experience. Over time, this association strengthens attention. The person becomes memorable not just because of what they said or did, but because of how they made someone feel during the interaction. Another important factor is mental repetition. When someone finds themselves thinking about a person more than once, the brain begins reinforcing that focus. Each time the thought returns, it becomes easier for the mind to revisit it again later. This creates a quiet loop where attention repeatedly circles back to the same individual. These lingering thoughts often appear through small reminders. Something you said, a shared joke, or even a simple memory of your presence may trigger the mind to return to that moment. The person might not openly express it, but internally, your image continues to reappear. When attention repeatedly settles on someone, it usually means that person has created a lasting impression. The mind rarely revisits people who feel emotionally neutral. Instead, it holds on to the individuals who spark curiosity and leave a subtle emotional imprint that refuses to fade quickly. Awareness changes attraction because it shifts your focus from chasing obvious signals to understanding subtle human behavior. When people lack awareness, they often judge attraction based only on clear actions, constant texting, open flirting, or direct compliments. If those things are missing, they assume there is no interest. But once awareness develops, you begin to notice the quieter patterns that reveal how someone truly feels. Instead of focusing on a single moment, awareness helps you observe consistency. You begin to see how someone pays attention, how they remember details, and how their energy subtly changes in your presence. These small behaviors often say more than dramatic gestures. They reveal where a person's attention naturally goes. Awareness also removes unnecessary insecurity. When you understand that attraction can appear in different forms, you stop reacting emotionally to every small interaction. You become calmer and more observant. This calm perspective allows you to see the full picture instead of misinterpreting isolated signals. Another powerful change is that awareness helps you recognize emotional curiosity. You start noticing when someone is quietly studying you, asking thoughtful questions, or finding subtle ways to reconnect. These behaviors are easy to overlook without awareness. Once you learn to observe rather than assume, attraction becomes easier to understand. What once seemed confusing begins to make sense because you are no longer looking only for loud signals. You are seeing the deeper patterns behind them.